Okay, good morning and good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome everyone to the Conversational Collective. This is an open, inclusive meetup dedicated to exploring, learning, and creating conversational technology. I'm your host, Meredith Schultz. I have 3 drinks on my desk to get me going this morning. It's 8 a.m. sharp here in Austin, Texas, and very glad you guys have all decided to join us today. So we have a panel discussion today on something super exciting that's been in the works for quite a while, and that's the Conversation Construction Guide with several people here that you see on the screen. And before we get started, I have just a few housekeeping things for us to go over. So first, we have some awesome organizers here on the Conversational Collective. This meetup is a labor of love, completely volunteer-based. So the people on the screen deserve a shout out. Bhishma, Olivera, Matt, Lauren, Meg, Sarah, Ethiopia, Hannaford, and Brittany. Thank you guys so much for putting this on every month. And thanks to our sponsor, Voxable. If you're not familiar, Voxable is a conversation design platform that helps teams design, test, and refine their conversation designs. And you can check out their website at voxable.io if you're interested in checking out their product. And if you or your company might be interested in becoming a sponsor for Conversational Collective, please do reach out on Twitter DM. Our handle is @ConvoCollective. So you can get in touch that way if you're interested. And yeah, if this is your first time, make sure that you've joined our community officially. If you're not a member in it yet, please make sure you sign up here, and we'll also put this in the chat later, so don't worry about trying to jot it down right now. And when you sign up on that community forum, you'll get access to our Slack and LinkedIn groups, which is super helpful if you're looking for a new job in the space. Someone, I will say, just posted a new job, I noticed, in our Slack channel just yesterday, so it is active. Or if you're hiring, it's a great place to also come and promote your open roles. And if you're neither one of those things, then just join our Slack and you can get to know the community. We're still small and growing, right? And see what other people are learning and reading about in the space. And you can also learn about our upcoming events by signing up. So that will give you access to our newsletter. We send emails about once a month, just letting you know when the next event is. And we'll also curate some cool links and things that we have been reading in the past month. And also make sure you follow us on Eventbrite, which is where we post these meetups every month. Okay, so we're almost done with all of the plugging and the housekeeping things. So if you haven't already, please introduce yourself in the Zoom chat. So during this entire event, you will be on mute while we have our panel discussion. So please don't type up, or do type out your questions actually for us, and we'll see if we can get to them during this discussion. And make sure you post it for everyone and not a DM to one person. Easy to do in Zoom chat, right? Hopefully we've all figured it out by now. And we'll try to get to it as soon as we can. Okay, so this is our agenda today, pretty short and open. We do have some interesting pre-selected topics, so I'll try to get to those questions that people left during registration. And yeah, let's get things started. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen because I know Matt's gonna be sharing a few things. So yeah, why don't we just get started with introductions first? And Matt, you were the first one at the top of my list here. So why don't you introduce yourself for just a minute, and we'll go through everyone on the panel and then start talking about what this conversational construction guide is.
Hi, everyone. My name is Matt Buck. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Voxable. I'm also one of the co-organizers of Convo Collective.
Awesome. And then let's see, John, you're next on my images here.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm John Covey. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bespoken.
Awesome. Okay, Lauren, you're next, and then Micah, and then Inge. So you want to introduce yourself, Lauren?
Hey, y'all. Yeah, good morning from Pittsburgh. I'm Lauren Golombesky, CEO and co-founder of Voxable. My background's in UX and conversation design, and I'm a co-organizer of Convo Collective.
Awesome. Micah.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you here. I am Micah Coppins. I am in charge of design at Open Dialogue, a conversational platform for designing and building conversational AI agents, and have background in conversation design, obviously, and currently working on my second book about conversation design, which hopefully one day will be finished.
That's awesome. So book number 2. Oh man, the
Yeah,
rest of us have to get started on book number 1. That is amazing. All right. And
I totally recommend doing it, but also not recommend it. It's very interesting, but an arduous journey, that's for sure.
like having kids, that's what happens is, you want to have a second kid, right? But you forget what the first was like. So I hear.
Yeah.
Cool. And then Inge.
Yes, hello everyone. Super excited to be here. My name is Inge de Bleecker. I also have a background in user experience and conversational AI, a degree in linguistics and natural language processing. I currently work independently with my own consulting firm, and I help my clients on strategy, research, and design for conversational applications.
Awesome. Yes, we have a good group of experts here. And then for those who don't know me, I'm Meredith. I work at LivePerson as a conversation design manager. See some people I work with here. So shout out to other folks at LivePerson. Yeah, so cool. Let's just kind of get started with some of the basics about what is this conversation construction guide? And I'll ask this question to Lauren, actually, because I think this is definitely, I think it started with you. You'll have to correct me if I'm not right on that. So what is it? And why was it created? What is it all about? Do you want to give us kind of the open intro on the conversation construction guide, Lauren?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Matt's going to be pulling up some visuals of what that guide contains. I'm not the originator of the guide. John is going to talk about the origin story behind the guide, but I'm just going to talk about what it is so you guys can all kind of level set as to like what we're even talking about. So the Conversation Construction Guide is a living, open source, community-driven conversational AI application guide with the aim of supporting conversational AI practitioners, educating stakeholders, and then really just building community discourse around our industry. So I just want to highlight it's a living guide, meaning that it's evolving and changing, and what you're going to see here is kind of the foundational work that we've done. But the other 2 points, it being open source and community driven, are really important to us. And so there's a lot of room to grow, and we want outside contribution. So we want anyone in the community who wants to contribute to be able to. We also want a diverse set of voices to be a part of this guide. So later on in our presentation or on our discussion, Matt will be going over how you can get involved and how you can contribute, and how we've kind of made it easy for people to contribute to this open source kind of documentation. So yeah, I think John can take over and talk about the origins, because I think him and Inge maybe had this idea early on.
Awesome. Yeah, John, I'm curious to hear more how this came to be and why you decided to form it with Inge back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So this morning I was going back through my email to refresh my memory on the history of this. It was not that long ago, it was just last year, but still had to take a look. And so last year I was trying to write something about my frustration with sort of the state of the art of what I thought was the guidance for people working in conversational AI. I did not think that people were getting advice that was really tailored to where things were today. It was either sort of dated advice, I thought, a lot of what's out there and a lot of the expertise, or too rooted, I thought, in mobile or web development. And so I really wanted to make the statement, and I was talking to Inge about it, about what I thought should be done, or how voice and chat should be developed for. And I was even calling it a manifesto, I think, when I look back at it. I had a draft of that. But then as I began writing it, I pretty quickly sort of dialed back the sort of grandiosity of what I was trying to achieve. I felt a lot more humble because I realized I knew some specific pieces, but the overall picture, I mean, I just had huge gaps in it. You know, I mean, I spent a lot of time on sort of the modeling side and testing and accuracy and things like that. But, you know, how it all fits together into a broader life cycle, that's part of what's missing. And I didn't really have the answers to that either. And so I've been talking to Inge at the time. I thought, well, I know Inge has a lot of expertise on the strategy and the UX side. You know, if we start to combine forces, maybe we could together write something that was going to be the more sort of authoritative resource that I envisioned, and that I wasn't going to be able to get there myself. And so that was sort of the impetus. And I think Lauren and Matt, who I really admired, I asked them if they wanted to get involved, and I think Inge, you asked Micah, and that got it going. And I'm pleased to see how it's evolved since then.
That's awesome. So yeah, so kind of there wasn't anything quite out there like this. I know there's, you know, articles about best practices, there's guides from different platforms point of view, but this sounds like it came out of something a little more, you know, third party and neutral as well. And were you, have any of you, I'll ask anyone on the panel this, have any of you been, had anything, you know, you were forming on your end before this came out? Like, how are you keeping track of these sort of things? Was it just in your head? Were you doing anything formal? I'll ask, oh yeah, go ahead, Inge.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. I think, as John pointed out, right, so we all saw a need for certain information. And so coming from the UX side of things, you've got sort of a set of best practices that everybody by now, or most people, know how to apply to web or mobile. But there just wasn't that sort of jump yet to, all right, well, we need to give a similar treatment to conversational applications. And so I never got much further than talking to Micah. I was like, oh, we need a heuristics checklist. We needed this. And Micah's like, yes, we do. And then life gets in the way, right? Until the Conversational Collective. And I think this was really the point where just kind of joining forces with other people, other experts, as John was saying, both rounding out sort of across the whole development cycle, as well as just having more people has been really helpful to get this started.
That's awesome. So is this primarily for conversation designers, or does it go beyond just designers into developers and other roles that are helping build conversational AI products?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in and talk about this. I think it could help anyone who touches the conversational AI process at an organization, whether that's strategy and like business decisions, all the way to more technical people and folks that need to have a technical understanding. We try to cover, and I'll talk a little bit about each section, but we try to cover like, what are the principles that drive conversational AI applications in the building blocks of the conversation construction guide? And then the life cycle. So what are the processes that go into creating a conversational AI application? And so that gets a little bit more tactical, might be more focused on practitioners, where the building blocks are a little bit more strategy focused. And then it's underpinned by a glossary that kind of normalizes all the terms that we talk about in the industry, because there's a lot of words that can be ambiguous, they can be used in a lot of different ways. And so we just want to kind of say, here's the way we're using these terms, and hopefully provide deeper understanding to the content itself. And so it can really be used at a higher level, as well as at a more tactical level as it grows and can support that type of activity.
That's awesome. Yeah, the open source piece of this is definitely a big deal. And yeah, love that about the glossary because when I've joined the space, I totally saw that different terms being used in different ways, or acronyms for different metrics. I think we were talking about that in a previous conversation of, what are these different metrics that are coming in from maybe contact centers, historical space or other areas. So yeah, I love that, just kind of putting it out there for everyone to align on, and also add, and this is a growing body of work that others can contribute to. Let's see, what are you, Joseph? Hey, Joseph, you're saying the same terms used in different ways, like slot. Yes. So all these different, different products have different ways of kind of interpreting these different terminologies. So yeah, I think it's, I know we're going to talk later about how to contribute, but because it is open source, but there's, ways that you can add just a little bit of information. It doesn't have to require quite a lot of effort. We're trying to collect different bits and pieces from everyone. Very cool. Okay, so let's dig into, you mentioned the glossary, Lauren. I want to dig into what the building blocks are as well, but let's just, okay, so let's do an overview real fast of the different elements, of the different categories of the conversation construction guide. And I know some of our panelists are focused in specific areas, so I want to be able to talk about that too. But Lauren, why don't you talk about the different categories just at a high level to orient us? And Matt, I don't know if you want to share again, just so we can kind of look at those sections on the homepage.
Yeah, so I touched upon building blocks. Those are really the principles, and I would say those are some of the higher level, what sort of things you need to have in place or think about, or the qualities of a conversation design endeavor or conversational AI endeavor, what things you need to keep in mind. And so they're not necessarily like you have to have every single building block. As you know, like building blocks, you can choose which ones fit your particular use case and process. But they are foundational kind of principles of what drives a conversational AI application. And then the life cycle covers more the individual process of creating a conversational AI application and what is involved within that process. So that would be more tactical information around what goes into any individual piece of the process. And that would be, more aimed towards practitioners, as well as helping to explain, what actually goes into a conversational AI piece of software. We've noticed, and one of the driving factors behind this was that a lot of people just think AI isn't actually software, that there's some magic behind the application, that AI is driving everything. But there's actually a lot of different components, just like any software application. And we wanted to kind of expose those different pieces. And then, as you said, like the glossary underpins all of that. Those are, more bite-sized terminology. It's a really great way for people to contribute in very small snippets. And then our contribution guide will go over directly how you can contribute to this open source guide. You do need, I think, a GitHub account, but we've made it really easy to contribute even if you're not technical. And so you can sign up and check out how to get involved, but Matt will go over that later.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So going into the building blocks specifically, there were sort of three sections there. And the first one was research. And I know that's big for you, Inge. What do you think the teams and companies should know about research and strategy from that building block section? What are some of the things that you've added in that section or are looking for people to contribute when it comes to the research phase and the kind of that initial strategic phase of the conversational guide building blocks?
Yeah, I think there's sort of two sides to it. And Lauren just mentioned, so one of the driving factors really was to kind of drive the point home that this isn't magic, this AI thing, that really, we're still building software. And so to follow, all the sort of processes and best practices that we collectively already know about. because, we do see that sort of going out of the window and, obviously not to anyone's advantage. The other side of it that I see is specifically when it comes to research and strategy is that people who don't necessarily know much of anything or anything about conversational AI feel quite comfortable that they can still do the research and the strategy aspect just fine. And I won't necessarily say that that's not true, but having a background in conversational AI, really understanding where sort of the pitfalls are, what's different about conversational AI is tremendously helpful. And so it's sort of those two sides of it that are reflected in these building blocks. And so on the research side, there are things that we mentioned like competitive analysis. Obviously, that is something that one does across the board at this stage. So that's defining your target audience. Again, great examples of what we already know to do outside of conversational AI. Analyzing, where it kind of gets a little different, perhaps for conversational AI, sort of, analyzing the different channels that customers can use. So conversational AI, not always, but very often is sort of one part of a bigger customer journey. And so understanding when conversational AI is appropriate versus not is one of those key points. Oftentimes, conversational AI gets dragged in because it's a sexy thing to do. It's the FOMO kicking in, but it's not necessarily positioned to be successful. And so those two sides are really what we're focusing on and really digging in deeper, in addition to what's already there. As Lauren mentioned, there's information on the way around sort of, well, how do you do these things? What are the methods? And then obviously with resources, going further outside, because there's, these are all big topics in and of themselves.
Yeah, those are huge. And I know that's obviously a big piece is, I think, educating what you said about educating on when is it the right time and use case to create a conversational experience versus when is it not, is a big point of education. I think we could use in the guide of, hey, what are use cases maybe people tried that just didn't work, or what would they have done differently if, looking back on it, to make it more conversational. So yeah, that's so, any other final things on that phase that you're looking for people to particularly contribute that maybe it doesn't have right now, that a different perspective that you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of what we're going for, right? Is sort of the different perspectives. We're kickstarting this with, we're seeding it with information, obviously, across the board. When you think about conversational applications, there are so many different types of applications, conversational applications. There's the customer support, then there's sort of more of the fact skills, if you wish, or something more like that, where it is sort of retrieving information. All of those are very different across different industries, and so really to get perspective on all of these aspects that we're covering here from different people with different experiences, in these different types of applications, different industries, is tremendously helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay, so then the next section is design and specification. And Mike, that's what you're writing a lot of books about.
Yeah, exactly. Although, what's interesting is that when you're actually writing a book about conversational applications, is that you really easily get stuck in this place where you're like, I'm using this term, but does everyone understand it in the same way? So the glossary, therefore, just going back to the glossary and not following the structure, sorry, but just going back to this glossary, that to me is kind of key, because when you think about conversational collaboration, which was a talk I did recently, which you need to have the same language. Everyone on the team, be it engineers, be it designers, be it NLU trainers, be it stakeholders, everyone has to be able to use the same language. The ability to use the same language starts with having a common glossary. So I think that glossary and the same thing, like what everyone has been saying, the contribution of other people in this field and this community to that and how they interpret certain terms is for me very, very valuable. And the same thing with all the building blocks really as well. It's we have now kind of collectively accumulated quite some experience, everyone that is in this community, even kind of beginning conversation designers have experience in previous fields like UX, like linguistics, and we all like have the ability to bring something to the table. And I think that's really important. For me, the whole construction guide is kind of the opportunity to give everyone a voice and to tell everyone, like, tell us what you think, rather than everyone saying, oh, well, there's no best practices anywhere, or we can't find any heuristics, or the heuristics that we can find are all from major platforms, and we're not sure that we agree. This is kind of the place for you to gently disagree, so that we can all come to a kind of a common understanding and agreement, perhaps, of what certain things mean, and talk about it in the same way, and help everyone move on to the path, because that's also how a technology evolves and how applications and software evolve, is where everyone kind of can come to an agreement on how we move things further faster. And with conversation design in particular, and that's kind of where this building block comes from. In the very early ages of conversation design, the happy path was kind of the sacred thing that you needed to do, and you couldn't do, like, the first thing that you do, design the happy path. And that doesn't help with the whole magic metaphor either, because between happy paths and Wizards of Oz and all of that, like, we're not helping people to find this less magic, by the way. So the building block that kind of I contributed to, which was design, one of the things we talk about is how we can think about useful paths, rather than one single happy path where everything goes as expected, but actually multiple paths that are useful for the user, rather than very app-driven. This is all the things we want the conversation application to say, and then hopefully we'll map ideal user answers to it. Kind of, what are useful paths through for the user? What are they trying to accomplish? And very close to what UX brings with jobs to be done, right? What are a certain number of tasks a group of users wants to accomplish in their context? And so it's a bit about what conversations do a certain group of users want to have around a certain topic in a certain context, rather than just find this one path through and then iterate upon it. So that's kind of one of the things I feel strongly about, I guess. But moreover, I think from a design perspective, there are a lot of frameworks that stem from product design, from service design, that we can learn from. And then there are very specific conversational specific things that we need to do and can't forget about. And it's really interesting to see how all of these map together. And so my hope for this building block is actually to say, well, we've put some initial content in there around kind of designing useful paths versus a happy path. We've also kind of put in a bit of a do and don't around how you start thinking about a conversational structure and specifying conversational structure. but my hope is that we'll kind of add other blocks to it, obviously. And one of the main things that I have unfortunately not had time for yet, because, well, life happens, as Inge said. And then I'd love to hear more about how others do it, is usability testing. That's definitely one of the things that is very important, that I think sometimes gets a bit forgotten about, or if not forgotten about, because it's conversational AI, it's like, oh, we'll see, we'll train and improve as we go, but there's usability testing that can happen up front, and there's lots of methods around it. So anyone that has kind of experience or has something to share around that, I really kind of encourage them to do so.
That's great. Yeah, that's definitely an area we haven't seen a ton of content from, and definitely needed. Just thinking about clients I work with, is like, are we testing this? When do we test? When do we not? People want sort of that assurance, and it's a good way to put something out there, or try something out before deploying, right? So lots of things that can go into the conversational design area, and love what you're saying about, let's move beyond the happy path now. Like, let's start thinking about these other sort of paths. So how does someone get out of, what if they want to go to a different happy path? How do we allow for that? What other types of use cases are there moving into different paths? So I think there's a lot that can be gleaned from what people are, digging into now, and maybe their first, second, or third job or project that they're working on, that we can all be learning from. And so, go ahead.
I think one of the key mind shifts for me is who are we actually making happy with that happy path? It's like, is it our happy path, or is it actually users being happy at the end of the conversational experience? But yeah, I think there's lots there when it comes to conversation design. When I think of one of the projects I've been working on, where I've kind of had to go back and again and again say, how to write conversations because you kind of play it out in your head.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that your conversational structure is solid and complex enough, and that your model is okay. Like, things can be broken even if you just write it out in a linear way, right? I mean, there's so many things that could happen. It's more about a structure than it is about individual dialogues.
Totally. Let's see, what is John is saying? Seems like it's often for the developers. That's true. Sometimes it's, it's a build question. Do we have time for that? Or so it's getting back to usability testing is like, well, what happens? How do we measure the volume of that? And I guess that, what's most important to design for based on, volume of conversations or priority of intents. And that kind of gets into, what the other part of the guide, which is all around the life cycle and the process. How once you're putting a conversational experience out there, you've got the best happy path design that hopefully went through usability testing and it's live. How do you optimize and improve that? And John, I know that's a big section you focused on in what you do. So what we were talking a couple of weeks ago about this, about just what kind of data should be what kind of data should you be collecting, and what are the right metrics? What are you looking for to add in this section? That maybe you want to see other people from other perspectives contribute when it comes to the life cycle process and collecting and measuring data.
Yeah, I think in terms of that data, a lot of times the starting point are actually some of the points that Inge and Mike touched upon. It is just doing some basic Wizard of Oz testing or user testing. It doesn't need to be sort of big data. You don't need massive data sets. Just gathering some basic data from interacting with real users and playing out how a conversation might work with a real person. That's a great starting point. And that's really valuable testing and feedback, for building these systems. At the same time, that is a starting point. And from there, and this is sort of what I specialize in and my company specializes in, you are expanding that data set, expanding the sophistication of the testing over time. If you're starting off with just some Wizard of Oz testing, which is really a great point, maybe your next step is, it may be a developer, and and I guess, yeah, be careful about this. You don't want them defining the whole thing. I think that's definitely a pitfall. But it may be a developer coming up with 10 or 20 utterances for different intents that are seen as critical. That again, I mean, that's not big data, but that's a good starting point. And you're using that to test the system, using it for doing the initial build out. Once that's put in place, you're going further, you get into beta, you get into production. That's where you're getting into larger data sets, and you really want to start to think about doing things in a more industrialized way. You can easily get into test scenarios that are in the thousands or tens of thousands when you're talking about conversational AI. So it is important to have this somewhat automated, to have it, be more industrialized. You're going to be looking at data sets that, it's not just even a single data set, and you can start to specialize in different areas where you're looking at different accents that users might have, different environments people might be speaking in. Clearly, if you're building something that's omni-channel, the nature of the utterances are going to be different based on whether people are typing or, they're just speaking with their voice, or what method of communication they're using, or talking on the telephone, or, interacting with a web chat. All of that is going to affect what type of data you're gathering. And then in turn, in terms of this life cycle, and I do want to put an asterisk on the life cycle, because I put, this goes to the initial point or impetus for the guide. I mean, this life cycle is a life cycle we tend to spend our time in at Bespoken. We're really focused on helping people optimize their AI models and the overall accuracy of these experiences. And that's a critical aspect, but there's a larger life cycle that it fits into, which is managing the overall conversational AI experience. And I think that's something that this group is working on defining together. I don't think we have total mastery of it. But within that, sort of optimization part for the conversational AI portion, testing out these models based on the data that's gathered, doing optimizations to them. And then, once that's all done, actually monitoring what's happening in production. We see that as really the critical process for managing this. Once you put it out there and you're monitoring it, that then feeds back into your data sets and the data that you're gathering. Because when really users are using it, you're absolutely, I mean, I think everyone has had this experience. I mean, it will be humbling. Whatever depth you do your testing to before you launch it, you'll not have gotten all the data, not even close. You're going to see users do all sorts of things that are outside of that happy path, that are outside of what you initially anticipated. And I guess this is the last point I would make on this life cycle is that, you have to really embrace that part. I mean, that to me is really the key to success in this, is that you don't look at launch as sort of the ending point. Instead, that's the opportunity to really make it good. That's your opportunity to really see what users are doing, to make enhancements, to tailor it really to what people want to do. So you're not inflicting that happy path on them. Beat Micah's point to death here. But you don't want to be inflicting that happy path on them. Instead, find the path that they want to use and really support it. I think that's really critical. And looking at it in that iterative way to improve it over time, that is absolutely the path to success. And I guess the final point I make on this is somewhat similar. I mean, with this guide, we're putting this out there now, and it's live, and we're proud of the initial stuff that we put in there. But it is a starting point, and we think that the real success of it will be if everyone, if all of us that have already been contributing and everyone else on this call makes additional contributions, so that we can really make it something that is hopefully definitive and authoritative for folks in this field.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was you got meta there. You got very much, yeah, user driven, and that's the experiences that we design and deploy as well as what we need to make this guide better. Yeah, there's a lot there in terms of methodology and processes. And I think, yeah, the biggest thing I see, again, especially for people who are launching a conversational experience for the first time, is that understanding of like, you just got started by putting this V1 out there. It is a growing thing, growing living thing. So use that startup mentality of get it live and then let your users kind of guide you to where you need to go, to an extent of your use case and product. But that's awesome. Yeah, lots that we can add in there from the community. So on that point, I want to move into more of the contribution and how people can get involved. And Matt, I know this is kind of your area you've been working on with GitHub specifically. Do you want to kind of tell us how people can get involved and what that process looks like? If now that okay, I've got something, the world needs to know what I've learned. You want to put it out there. How do they get started contributing to the guide?
Sure thing. Yeah, and this was a big focus for us, and I'm going to paste in a link to the website I'll be sharing on screen here. So what we're looking at here is the contribution guide, and this is both for the construction guide as well as the entire website itself. So as we mentioned at the top, we host the source code for the Convo Collective website and construction guide on GitHub. I imagine many people here are familiar with GitHub. You may not have an account because you may have never needed to use it before if you aren't a technical person, but we have made it very, very simple to contribute to the guide. You don't need to use the command line, nothing like that. Everything takes place in your browser. So there are a couple of different ways that you can edit. So you can either use this link to access our content management system. And so when you click login with Netlify identity, and then you click this continue with GitHub button, that's going to log in with your GitHub account. And that's going to take you to a screen that looks like this. And you'll just see a list of all of our building blocks as well as glossary items. And then from here, you can click on one of those, and then that's just going to open up a standard content management system editing interface with just the text of that building block over on the left. And as you're making changes, you're seeing kind of a rough live preview of what that's actually going to look like. And then there will be a save button that appears when you make a change. When you click that save button, on the back end, what's going to happen is what's called a pull request is going to be created on our repository on GitHub. And a pull request is what the way that you alert a repository owner that, hey, I've got a recommended change. And so that pull request is where the editors are going to then go in, review your change. We have a really simple interface for doing that, and get that published to the live site. And you can kind of see what that full process looks like right here. So clicking logging in with GitHub, then that list loads. I select one of the building blocks, editor loads, and then I can just go right in there to make a change. And then just click that save button right up at the top. And that's really all there is to it. So it can be something as simple as, I found a typo, or I'd like to add an entirely new building block, or I have, some additional links I think would be valuable for this glossary term. If you go into the glossary, one great way to contribute, you'll see lots of glossary terms in the content management system that haven't been published yet. Those are just terms that we're looking for definitions to be added. I'm sure there's some expansions that could be made to the definitions. And the glossary is really just the first of a series of different kinds of resources we'll be adding. And so one of my reasons I was really interested in this project is, I've been involved in this space now for coming up on 8 years, unbelievably, and I've just been, collecting bookmarks that entire time of, different frameworks and different books, especially, and things like that. So we'll be adding different categories of resources like that Next up is going to be books, because I know there are some great new ones coming out. I believe we'll need to add Micah's to that list as well. Yes, so really looking to have, just this truly open place where we can come together as a community and share all of these resources that we're coming across every day, working in what is, as I'm sure we all know, a really fast moving space. So if you run into any problems at all, you can always reach out to us or reach out to me. I'm TechPeace, that's Tech PEAC on most of the social networks, or Matt at voxable.io. Happy to help you out with any questions if you run into any issues at all. You'll also see on every page of the website, down in the lower right hand corner, you'll see this edit this page on GitHub. If you are someone who is familiar with code, you can also just click that link and it's going to take you directly to an editing interface where you can, again, suggest a change via GitHub. So try to make it as simple as possible. I'm really looking forward to getting everyone involved in
Matt,
the process.
I had one thought. I wanted to cover like maybe why people would want to contribute to the guide at all. And I think, and this is just reflecting on a comment that was made in the chat. I think it's a really great way to put some of your thoughts and ideas out there, and to, if you are a person who's talking to stakeholders, clients, etc., and you have these perspectives that you want to share with them, and you continue to see the same patterns, this is a great place to start to put that information. That's kind of what all of us are doing. We do have a lot of historical, I think each of the people on this call, each of the panelists have a ton of historical data that we're drawing from, or information that we've created that we're drawing from. And I'm sure a lot of you do. And so you can put that out there. It's an opportunity to have content that's directly linked back to your name in your GitHub profile. So that's still will be part of something that you've contributed to, no matter what you go on to do or if you switch jobs. So that's a cool part about this being open source.
That's awesome. I was going to ask, can you tell who contributed? And yes, you get credit. Your name is out there. Really, really important part for just building your own credibility in the space. Love that. Thank you, Matt, for walking us through that. It looks pretty straightforward. One question I had about it is, so what is there an approval process? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes, so when you make that change, that's going to open the that pull request that I mentioned. Mm-hmm. And so the pull request is what alerts the kind of the editors. So we have different committees in Conversational Collective. We're kind of a leaderless ad hoc group of volunteers. And so this is one of the committees, is the Contribution Guide Committee. And so at the next meeting of the committee, that's where, if it's not something like a smaller change, like, hey, you needed a comma here, or, I caught a typo, we'll kind of accept those as they come in. But if it's like a larger submission, we'll discuss that at our next meeting, which happen every couple of weeks, and get that merged in. If you're interested in being a part of that committee as well, definitely reach out. Or any of the committees involved in organizing Convo Collective. Always happy to have new organizers.
Awesome. Yeah. I think the probably easiest way to do that is just sign up, from the links that Lauren just posted in again, and we've got a Slack workspace for Convo Collective, and all of us can be reached through that once you join. Great question from Eden. Can we have the guide in different languages? And is this, are we talking about building conversational experiences for English, or is it, what else needs to be? I'm sure we have a ton of things we need to add just in terms of different languages, translation, any future thoughts or plans around that from anyone on the panel?
Yeah, I could jump in. Yeah, that's a great question, Eden. We would love to have the guide translated into as many languages as possible. And that's a wonderful way to contribute if you are someone who speaks multiple languages and you are willing to help us translate that guide content. Definitely please reach out. And yeah, I would love to equip the site to kind of offer as many languages as possible for each of the entries in the guide, for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely something we need, especially from different perspectives. And anyone listening in, if you have other questions, we're definitely in the final Q&A portion of our event. But I'll add just to that, talking about different languages, that I've often run into a few times now where we're translating a conversational experience into multiple languages. You know, we've got English, Spanish, French, whatever it may be, as the product is expanding. And that in and of itself is a lot of really interesting learnings that I've had with my team members, definitely leading on a few team members that have a linguistics background who understand that space, all kinds of interesting learnings that we've had. So that's something that I know the guide needs is how do you think about, you know, adapting your experience for different languages? And there are some tricks that are different than doing this for mobile and web, you know, kind of back to the beginning point that there are similarities, of course, in building conversational experiences, that just like any other type of product on mobile, app, web, whatever it may be. But there are differences, and that's definitely one area that I can say we need to have some more thought leadership around. Cool. Well, anyone else have any questions or things they'd like to add before we wrap in the last couple of minutes? Anyone from the panel have anything else that we didn't cover that you know needs to be covered before we jump?
I think you. Go ahead.
I think just talking about, you know, going back to those future plans for the guide, like just really, we want this to be expansive and cover as much as is valuable. And that really takes community contribution. And there's a lot of areas that all of us, the founder, like the maintenance committee or the committee that's driving this, has experience in. But getting different perspectives, getting people to disagree, that's what really makes this interesting. And I think drawing off of what Micah said in the previous comment, it's like there will be disagreements in this industry as to what is the best way, and that's great. And having a place and a format where we can do that and kind of show some of that potentially, it's not like we all have to think the same way, but show how a lot of different people approach this given the channel, the use case, the industry. And this is still a very young industry, even though a lot of us have been in this for a while, still a very young industry. So it will evolve, and we want this to evolve as the industry does.
Awesome.
I love how this industry is always referred to as young, no matter how the years pass. It makes us feel young as well. Like, but the fact that there is, I would agree with Lauren, the fact that there is disagreement is actually a sign of the community and the industry maturing rather than anything else. Yeah, I just wanted to add, thank you, Meredith, for kind of calling out that internalization, localization bit, which is indeed very important. So I'm hoping we'll get some nice contributions on that as well.
Yeah, there's just, again, so many different aspects and lenses to look at this from. Yeah, and I think it was Mikey or Inge that said, you know, this needs to be a place of where we can all gently disagree and have those healthy conversations. So, you know, maybe there's a future, you know, feature added to the guide where there's more discussion or, you know, back and forth, and we have more threads, or maybe we add a channel to Convo Collective Slack or somewhere else where that happens if we get into more of this, you know, gentle debating. But yes, yeah. all good things.
Stay tuned. I had an idea on this call actually for that exactly.
Like it.
Just one more thing that we haven't touched upon, which I'd also like to see more content in the guide about around, which is inclusive design and accessibility. So let's make sure that we have a building block for that as well. And I'm just, as we are going through this call, and each time that we talk to each other on the maintenance, I love the whole maintenance committee namer. It's really in line with the whole construction terminology that we have going. one of the things I would also accessibility and inclusive design, of course, but I think that John and Matt wouldn't mind having a few more engineers on their side as well, because it's a bit skewed towards UX and design with me, Lauren and Inge. So just wanted to call that out.
Yes, we need that developer perspective for sure, because that's a big piece of it, and it's just part of what makes this all better. Really good.
I always
gap
tell our
between-
engineers that I wouldn't be anything without them. They're the ones that actually make the thing work. So both sides working together is really important.
And bridging the gap, because that's a big challenge that a lot of folks in the industry have, is if you're a developer, how you talk to and include designers to get better designs from them, and designers how you talk to developers. And the guide can be a place where you start to build that vernacular. And I agree, having more developer perspectives and even just people who sit on both sides of that kind of role would be really great.
Yeah. Oh, and Laura just added, and ethics. Yes, that is a whole other area.
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen some really interesting presentations even from this meetup on that topic. So yeah, pulling from those and other really important conversations that we need to have around that is definitely a good call out, Laura. Yes, we should add that as a section and just get that started so people have that memory jog. Cool. Well, we're 1 minute, and so I want everyone to get off and wrap their day or get their day started like me. We've all got work. This has been an amazing conversation, and excited to see where the conversational guide goes. And thank you all who joined, who listened in today, and those who are listening to the recording. We'll post this out, and yeah, let's see where this goes. I'm excited that we've launched it. Congrats everyone on this panel for putting in the initial foundational work. And yeah, everyone have a good rest of your day. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.